I'm very appreciative of the president. We've gotten a lot of good things done the last 2 years together. So I look forward to working with the president to get good things done for our state.
Rick Scott won, and he won by a lot. I don't know what happened to all those votes that disappeared at the very end. And if I didn't put a spotlight on that election before it got down to the 12,500 votes, he would have lost that election.
The only thing better than being elected governor of Florida is being elected twice in 2 weeks. I think it's good that Brenda Snipes has submitted her resignation. There was no way as governor that I was going to let her preside over another election down there after all the problems that they had.
Peter Ducey is in Tallahassee, Florida this morning. Peter, what changed that made Nelson finally want to concede?
Julie, he's been down since Election Day, but he only got about 1/6 as many votes as he needed in the recount to win. So after the Secretary of State posted the final results yesterday, he got Governor Scott's number, called him, and then posted this.
Well, things worked out a little differently than Grace and I had hoped, but let me say I by no measure feel defeated, and that's because I've had the privilege of serving the people of Florida and our country for most of my life.
Governor Rick Scott, now Senator-elect Scott, had been pressuring Bill Nelson to drop out for days, but changed his tune after the call around lunchtime yesterday, saying in a statement, "I just spoke with Senator Bill Nelson, who graciously conceded, and I thanked him for his years of public service. This victory would not be possible without the hard work of so many people. Now the campaign is truly behind us, and that's where we will need to leave it." Soon, Senator-elect Scott is going to head back up to Washington, D.C. to finish up some of the new senator orientation activities that he was not able to complete when he was up there and he was not yet the winner. Julie.
Okay, let's talk Brenda Snipes. A lot of pressure on her botching the whole recount situation. Why is it that she might be resigning?
We're checking with the Secretary of State to see if they've actually physically got the resignation letter from her, but the Sun Sentinel is reporting that after all of that, she just decided suddenly that she wants to spend more time with her family. Remember, though, the recount that she ran in Broward County was marred with controversy throughout. This weekend, 2,000 ballots just went missing, and she defensively insisted they were somewhere in her building. Then her team also turned in machine recount results 2 minutes late, and they were rejected by the state for that reason. Although after that happened, she did tell me that she was pleased with the way that things were going on her watch. Julie.
All right, Peter Ducey, thank you very much. Go.
Meanwhile, the president defending Republicans' performance in the midterms. Exclusive interview on Sunday. Fox News Sunday with Chris Wallace. He said this.
I won the Senate, and that's historic, too. Because if you look at presidents in the White House, it's almost never happened where you won a seat. We now have 53 as opposed to 51. And we have 53 great senators in the U.S. Senate. Number two, I wasn't on the ballot.
Well,
you
kept saying.
I said, look at me. I said, look at me.
Pretend I'm on the ballot.
But I have people, and you see the polls, how good they are. I have people that won't vote unless I'm on the ballot, okay?
Good interview with Chris Wallace on Sunday. Kellyanne Conway picks it up on a Monday. Senior counsel to the president. How you doing, Kellyanne? And welcome back here from the North Lawn there. I want to start in Florida. How does the White House view these victories for Senate and governor?
This is truly joyful and triumphant since we're in the holiday season, and the president made a big difference. I think that Governor Scott and Congressman DeSantis ran excellent campaigns, but this president getting in there several times in those last 6-7 days really made the difference. And also him encouraging them not to bail on their clear victories. You had Andrew Gillum not once but twice now concede to Governor Scott, to Ron DeSantis for governorship. They clearly won, and I think that people got another view of somebody like Brenda Snipes and her shenanigans, and that should be the first order of business for Governor DeSantis to really look at who's running these counties and this electoral process. Also, let me just say that the last time Senator Nelson ran for Senate 6 years ago, he won by 1.1 million votes, a 1 million vote plus margin. This time he lost. The people of Florida clearly don't want him to be the senator. He's been unremarkable. He should be credited for his service. But in the last few years, he's been sort of unremarkable in his Senate record, and also he voted against Kavanaugh.
Got it. Just move out of Florida. What is your message for these suburban women who who turned away from the Republican Party this past term. How do you win them back, Kellyanne?
Well, some did, not all did. And frankly, I don't like stereotyping people according to their gender or their race or where they live. But I think we always are looking for ways to expand the number of voters who like free markets and freedom, who want peace and prosperity, which this president has delivered. And I believe as time marches on, people will realize that if you try to roll back this huge economic boom, we have unprecedented unemployment numbers and growth numbers and optimism and confidence numbers from consumers, from manufacturers, from small business owners and aspiring small business owners. We can't go backwards. We literally cannot afford for people to have less of their hard-earned money, to have less job security and job availability, job mobility that we have because of this president's financial stewardship. That's a very clear nexus, and I think it showed in races like those in Florida, in the third most populous state with 21 million Floridians going to the polls and saying, we want to keep this peace and prosperity going. The suburban women also, I would note for you something very curious that didn't happen in the messaging from the left this time. They didn't talk that much about abortion. They didn't talk that much about guns. They were talking about other things, but they're going to struggle now in the House as the majority party, figuring out, are they beholden to this new leftward drift to socialism? They've got a 28-year-old socialist from New York who's got a hero's welcome. They have the 72-year-old. They have the 72-year-old socialist from Vermont.
Yeah, I get it. I got a lot more I want to squeeze in here, and these are going to be debated over the next 2 years. On the Mueller matter, I heard him tell Chris Wallace that he has submitted answers in writing, not turned them over to Bob Mueller. Can you say before Thanksgiving if those answers will be turned in?
I'll leave that to the president as outside counsel, Bill. I cannot comment on the timing, but I want to repeat for your viewers that this president and those around him have been completely compliant with every request. 1.4 million pieces of paper, folks, think about that. 1.4 million pieces of paper have been produced. 33 people or so, we read in the paper, have either been interviewed or asked for information and have complied. And that includes the President of the United States, who from the beginning has said there was no Russia collusion. I assure you there wasn't at the highest levels of the campaign. If other people were doing shenanigans, trying to make themselves important, or didn't have enough faith in Donald J. Trump that he can get the job done and beat Hillary Clinton on his own, which he did, he and Governor Pence did, to get elected. Those of us at the highest echelons of the campaign weren't talking to Russia.
Or maybe they don't. On the media, we heard about new rules that will be set up. They're not yet made public, but here was the answer given to Chris Wallace from yesterday. Give our viewers a chance to hear this now.
We have to create rules and regulations for conduct, et cetera, et cetera. We're doing that. We're going to write them up right now. It's not a big deal. Nobody believes in the First Amendment more than I do. And if I think somebody's acting out of sorts, I will leave. I'll say, thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate you coming, and I'll leave. And those reporters will not be too friendly to whoever it is that's acting up.
So do we know what the new rules are, Kellyanne?
They're in process, and look, the judge's opinion had to do with the Fifth Amendment process, the due process. It did not have to do with the First Amendment. You don't have a First Amendment right to be in the White House. Once you are allowed in, of course, then there needs to be a process. So that's exactly what the press shop is working on. But what the president said is incredibly instructive, Bill. He is saying that if somebody ruins it for everyone else, if the president had walked away early in that press conference, which is when the exchange occurred, then he would not have answered 68 questions from 35 reporters, which is exactly what he did. He is the most transparent, accessible president in our lifetime, if not ever. He's willing to stand there. He's willing to gaggle. He's willing to give all these interviews. He's willing to stand on the South Lawn. He's willing to have talk during a pool spray about policy. And yet, if someone, one or two are going to ruin that.
Right. You may have a lot of White House correspondents watching this interview wondering what the new rules are and what they have to pay attention to.
The press shop is deciding that. The press shop is deciding that. I think you'll hear that in the next few days or few weeks. I'll leave that to them. But in the meantime, here we are.
What are the bounds then by which those reporters need to operate when those new rules come out?
Well, the president has made clear that he believes that when you come to the White House, and I agree, you should show respect for the presidency. You should show respect and decorum for the White House. And some do and some do not. But I would also point out that the particular outlet in question has 50 White House passes, I'm told. Around 50 White House passes. They clearly have continued to be a 24/7 outlet without that reporter at work for those few days or so, and they continue to be fairly anti-Trump most of the time. Tune in sometime if you can stand the venom and the poison. I try to go on there and state the president's case when I feel like it's suitable. invited there pretty often.
You said in the coming days or even a couple weeks, so I'll wait in the White House to give us that guidance. In the meantime, is that reporter allowed back in the White House? Because I was given a note about an hour ago that the White House made a, quote, preliminary decision to suspend a hard pass for Jim Acosta yet again. Are you fighting this?
I am not aware of that. I am not aware of anything happening in the last hour, and I would have to talk to the press shop about that. But
okay,
obviously it was reinstated. He came here.
I got it. Is he allowed access to the White House today?
I don't know. I don't know that answer. I've got somebody from the press shop standing right here. I don't know that answer. But I want to broaden the conversation out to the White House press corps and freedom of the press. The president is absolutely right when he says nobody likes the First Amendment more than him. He's so accessible. He's always giving the answers. He sends us out here to talk about that. And I'm on TV almost every single day trying to talk about policy. But look at just last week. All the coverage, Bill, was about who works here, not the work that is done by the people who work here. Are we not interested in policy? Are we not interested in what goes on here and the many different things that happen through the cabinet rather than just who's in the cabinet or who's up or who's down? And I guess eventually everybody will be right. Everybody will leave at some point, including the president 6 years from now. But isn't there just the least bit of shame? Isn't the least bit of shame that the headlines and the Twitter that explodes about palace intrigue? It's really silly.
Anytime you want to talk policy, again, you're invited to come back here and discuss
that. Well, thank you.
Kellyanne, thank you so much for your time today. Kellyanne Conway for the North Lawn. Have a great week and a great Thanksgiving.
Fox News alert now on another big story today. Thousands of migrants on the U.S. border with Mexico greeted by angry protesters. Hundreds of people in Tijuana protesting as the migrant caravan continues to make its way through the north. We are live on the ground.
Also, the Trump team about to receive an official report on the killing of that columnist Jamal Khashoggi. What the president is saying on that today. Coming up here.
And more on that big interview between President Trump and Chris Wallace as the Fox News Sunday anchor gets a special tour of the Oval Office. Central American migrants seeking asylum. Hundreds of people in Tijuana protesting the migrants' arrival at a park where they have set up camp along a fence between the U.S. and Mexico. 3,000 migrants, as you know, already in Tijuana, with thousands more coming across the border. Nearly 6,000 American troops deployed by President Trump have been busy reinforcing border crossings, and we will be live on the ground coming up.
I don't know. You know, who can really know?
What if the Crown Prince, speaking to you, the President of the United States, directly lied to you?
Well, he told me that he had nothing to do with it. He told me that, I would say, maybe 5 times at different points. You saw we put on very heavy sanctions, massive sanctions on a large group of people from Saudi Arabia. But at the same time, we do have an ally, and I want to stick with an ally that in many ways has been very good.
Another intriguing part of that interview with Chris Wallace over the weekend, CIA apparently concluding the Saudi Crown Prince personally ordered the killing of Jamal Khashoggi. The president saying he declined to listen to that tape that allegedly contains audio of the death. Governor John Sununu, former White House chief of staff to President George H.W. Bush. How you doing, Governor? Good morning to you. Trying to figure out how you work these diplomatic angles right here. If the CIA report comes out and says one thing and then you think about the relationship
and the State Department then followed up.
Yeah, and you think about the relationship with Saudi Arabia. Right. Do you think anything changes in this relationship? What's your expectation after learning what we have for the past 2 days?
Well, look, the president has acknowledged that what happened to Mr. Khashoggi was a horrible thing and that there have to be appropriate consequences to those involved. But he also knows that this is a very important region. It is a critical region. It is a region that is not inherently stable. It is a region that is extremely complicated, and it's made complicated because a number of our allies there have conflicting agendas amongst themselves. And so we have, as a nation, over the past quarter century, been involved in conflicts there that have cost us trillions of dollars and the lives of thousands of our young men and women. So this puts the context of how complicated his decision's going to be. I suspect he's going to have to sit down with Pompeo and Mattis and Bolton and Haspel and Coates and listen to the report and then assess the consequences of whatever nuances are in the decisions he has to make. But he is going to make what I think is one of the most consequential decisions of his presidency on this matter.
Yeah, speaking of decisions, I thought this was an interesting moment in the Oval Office with Wallace and President Trump. Just watch this exchange here.
When you're sitting at the desk, how do you make decisions? I mean, do you agonize over them? Do you second guess yourself? How does...
I don't think about it. I don't think about, how I make them. I make what I consider the right decision.
Toughest decision you've had to make as president?
Well, I think North Korea's been very tough because, we were very close.
Governor, you were in the Oval Office, the West Wing, for many years. I mean, what do you think about when you hear...
With a slightly different president, Bill.
Yeah, okay.
With a slightly...
What about making those decisions when you know so much is on the line? What did you think of the interchange there?
Well, I think, when you listen to the interchange, I think the president is right in working hard not to brood over his decisions. I think a presidency can be destroyed if the president makes a tough decision and broods over it. I think he is correct. Later on in that conversation, I think he said he brings his team in and he lets them go at it against each other, and he listens. And I think that's an important part of the process for any president. The president that I worked for, George Herbert Walker Bush, Scowcroft, Baker, myself, we went at it a number of times for the president, trying to give him, sometimes taking positions that we didn't believe in ourselves, but at least giving him the arguments on the other side. That's an important thing for the president to hear. So I think the process is good. I hope the president understands that on decisions like the Saudi decision, like the North Korea decision, that it should not just be a gut decision, but based on what he hears from those advisors.
Very interesting stuff. Great to get your insight. Thank you, Governor. John Sununu, New Hampshire today. See you next week. Have a good Thanksgiving, okay?
Take care. Happy Thanksgiving
to you. Hope you get a drumstick, if that's what you want.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor.
Fox News alert on the raging and deadly California wildfires. There are 80 dead so far statewide, nearly 1,000 people unaccounted for. We are live in Malibu with the very latest.
Also horrifying. Inside that car is 17-year-old Sophia Flourish flying off the track, high speed yesterday, tight turn. Wow, the car crashed into the fence, hit a building and dropping to the ground. She's a German race car driver, suffered a spinal fracture due to undergo surgery today, so we hope the best for that and the outcome. That is a terrifying moment for everybody watching.
You see the wreckage, but you don't see her. Where in the world did she land? I have no idea, but the fact that she wasn't killed is a miracle. Her car was shredded into pieces.
Back surgery today, and we hope the best.
Stuff.
It turns out okay.
All right. So a Fox News alert now on California's deadliest and most destructive wildfires in the state history. At least 80 people are dead. At least 1,000 people still remain unaccounted for. Rain in the forecast could complicate search and rescue efforts, but also bring relief, of course, much needed relief to those firefighters still on the front lawn and on the front lines. Jonathan Hunt is live in Malibu with the very latest. And Jonathan, let's start up north. What's the latest there?
Well, Julie, the rain will help the firefighters, as you mentioned, although flames are not the real issue there now. The urgent issue rescuers are facing is identifying any human remains still amid the devastation there. It is a tough job and not an enjoyable one for anybody by any means. And the rains, when they come down, could sweep a lot of that ash away, and that could make it even more difficult to identify those who were burned to death in that deadly Camp Fire. Also last night, there was a vigil held near Paradise, California, the town that was destroyed. A lot of people showing up just to try to find some comfort. Listen here.
Just know that God's comforting us. Yeah. It's hard to imagine, and we're living it. It's really, and then I look around at all the kindness.
My wife she needs some closure. To be around other people that have gone through the same thing that we have, it helps with the grieving process.
It's going to be a tough Thanksgiving week for a lot of people up in Northern California, Julie.
And down south, Jonathan, where you are, some good news, at least for folks there, right?
Yeah, a lot of residents now being allowed back into Malibu. They're being greeted this morning by a beautiful sunrise. You missed just by a couple of minutes the spectacular scene we had here. But the sad reality is that the sunrise is revealing for a lot of them the stark reality of what they have to come back to. And that, in the case for hundreds of families here, is pretty much nothing. Just this kind of destruction is what they are going to find. Concerns about the rain here too, Julie. We are predicted to get some around midweek, right around Thanksgiving. These homes where we are right now, right in the foothills of the Santa Monica Mountains. And when you've had this kind of fire, destroys all the trees, destroys all the brush, there's no anchor for a lot of the soil and the rocks on those hillsides. The concern now is if we do get significant rain, we're at danger of very significant mudslides. So that's the next fear here for residents in Malibu, Julie.
Wow. All right, Jonathan Hunt, thank you.
28 past now, another alert. Florida Republican Rick Scott unseating longtime Democratic Senator Bill Nelson. It is now official. That's the first time in more than 100 years Florida has two Republican senators, but the election drama is not over yet. We'll explain why. More on that, plus there is this today. Have a listen.
The biggest flaw, from my point of view, is that he was chosen for the purpose of interfering with the Mueller investigation. He auditioned for the part by going on TV and saying he could hobble the investigation.
Congressman Adam Schiff going toe-to-toe with the president over acting Attorney General Matt Whitaker and the Russia probe. New York Congressman Pete King is standing by. We're going to get his take on all of this and more next.
I think he's very well aware politically. I think he's astute politically. He's a very smart person, a very respected person. He's going to do what's right.
Charles Payne's going to be by in a couple minutes here. Actually, 1 hour to let us know what we need to understand. So,
you know, Black Friday's on Friday, so it'll be interesting to watch. And so far with this economy, I bet you Black Friday's probably going to be one of the
And I have to think, you know, the online sales are going to be up again this year.
Yep.
Year over year, we keep on seeing that.
I mean, online sales are the way to go.
Right, you got your shopping done, right?
Oh, God, I'm up until 2 in the morning doing it every night. Thank God for Amazon Prime.
I'm going to get you my list.
All right.
Here we go. Republicans finally clinching some big wins in the midterms. Brian Kemp will be the next governor of Georgia. Rick Scott, Ron DeSantis, the respective races for Senate and governor have now been won in Florida, and that recount weighing heavily in the Sunshine State, as you know. Here's Rick Scott.
It was very frustrating. We, when I announced we'd won that Tuesday night, we were up 57,000 votes, and they just kept finding ballots. And
home. Griff, good morning. How'd it work out?
Good morning, Bill. Well, it's not over yet because Fox News has just obtained the resignation letter from the election supervisor in Broward County, Dr. Brenda Snipes, after losing over 2,000 ballots, missing deadlines. She writes to Governor Scott, although I have enjoyed this work tremendously over these many election cycles, both large and small, I am ready to pass the torch. Therefore, I request you accept my letter of resignation effective January 4th, 2019. Dr. Snipes' term was expected to run till 2020, but she came under too much scrutiny. Now, Governor-elect DeSantis will have an opportunity to replace her. The other big news, of course, over the weekend, Bill, and that is after 18 years, Bill Nelson conceding to Rick Scott in that Senate race. Nelson lost by 10,033 votes. Senator-elect Scott writing at FoxNews.com, quote, "Now the voters of Florida have spoken, and I am honored to serve as our state's next senator and share Florida's success with the entire nation." Just a lot of people have been asking me, have they still found those missing 2,040 ballots in Broward County? We're not sure, but we're hearing that Dr. Snipes may be holding a press conference at 2. We'll try and find out.
We shall watch. Thank you, Griff. Griff Jenkins there in Florida. Thank you, sir.
Yes and yes. I think the appointment is unconstitutional. He's clearly a principal officer, and the fact that he is a temporary principal officer doesn't mean that that is any less subject to Senate confirmation. Constitutionally, it has to be subject to confirmation. I think they lose that case when it goes to the Supreme Court.
All right, there you go. California Congressman Adam Schiff taking acting Attorney General Matt Whitaker to task, trading insults online with President Trump over the role Whitaker will play in the Russia investigation. Let's bring in Congressman Pete King, member of both the House Homeland Security Committee and House Select Committee on Intelligence. Thank you very much, Congressman. Always great to see you.
Thank you, Julie.
All right, I want to go first on these two online jabs between Adam Schiff and the president. Adam Schiff says Democrats would likely change the appointment of Matthew Whitaker. Then President Trump tweets this on your screen. So funny to see little Adam Schiff with a double T talking about the fact that acting Attorney General Matt Whitaker was not approved by the Senate, but not mentioning the fact that Bob Mueller, who is highly conflicted, was not approved by the Senate. I'd like to think this was an unfortunate typo, but what do you think? That the president's sending Adam Schiff a message here?
Yeah, I wish the president hadn't done it. Listen, to me, the president has a strong enough case on this. As far as everything I've seen, I don't think there's going to be any evidence of collusion at all. They should let the Mueller report run out. He shouldn't let Adam Schiff get him distracted. I've known Adam for a number of years. For the most part, we get along. I think he's become very partisan, though, in the last year or so. And I think, for instance, him saying earlier on that he knows that the president appointed Matt Whitaker to obstruct or to somehow turn off the Mueller investigation, there's absolutely no evidence for that. And I think Adam hurts his own case by making these charges without having any evidence. He tries to prejudge everything. And the president just let Adam say what he wants and don't jump into it. He's the president of the United States, and this investigation is going to go forward. Again, I don't know Matt Whitaker, but from all indications, he's extremely qualified.
Right.
The Justice Department has said that his appointment is legal. Leave it at that, and let's go forward.
Okay, but before we go forward, we got to read Schiff's response. He tweeted back,
Yeah.
wow, Mr.
Sure.
President, that's a good one. Was that like your answers to Mr. Mueller's questions, or did you write this one yourself? Okay, so you also sit on the Intel Committee. What do you make of the likely Intelligence Committee chairman's response there to the president?
Yeah, I think he's somehow trying to imply that the president, I guess, is not giving honest answers, or he doesn't know what the answers would be. The president has, again, turned over 1 million documents to the Mueller investigation.
Well, he's also implying that he didn't answer the questions himself, because the president had said he did answer those questions himself. And now he's, Schiff is implying that he did not. So he's essentially calling the president a liar.
Yeah, well, listen, I disagree with that. The fact is, I'm sure the president was with his lawyers. That's what you have lawyers for. When you're given written interrogatories or questions, you always consult with your lawyers. But in the end, it's the president who's responsible. He's the one who's under oath. He's the one who is submitting these, and so they are the president's answers. And again, Adam, I think, is also trying to be a little cute here. Bottom line is the president is complying, and he has done what he's required to do, and not even required to do. I don't think he even had to do this in the first place, but he is doing it, and he should get the credit for that.
Cute's one way to describe it, that's for sure. I'd come up with a different one for that, but I can't say it on TV.
Right.
Now, Schiff and other Democrats are arguing that Whitaker, who is, of course, appointed by President Trump, should be subject to Senate approval. But the president argues, look, Mueller wasn't confirmed by the Senate to his position. And, of course, the Attorney General, who is confirmed by the Senate, appoints special prosecutors. What should happen here? Because, again, Robert Mueller was not appointed to this position. Should it be different for Whitaker?
Again, this is an interpretation of a statute that none of us have really even looked at before to any extent. It's going to be decided ultimately by the courts, but the Department of Justice, I thought, put out a very reasoned statement, very reasoned analysis as to why the Whitaker appointment is valid and does not require Senate confirmation. So, again, I think this is a side issue being thrown out there by the Democrats. And Matt Whitaker was qualified, and again, the court will ultimately decide it. But from what I've seen so far, I would say the president had the full right to make this temporary appointment, and that he is serving lawfully and legally.
All right. I also want to just bring up the fact that several House Democrats on Sunday shows over the weekend said that they will be focusing on targeting Trump in the new Congress. And James Comey tweeted this last week, and I want your reaction to this. House Republicans can ask me anything they want, but I want the American people to watch. So let's have a public hearing. Truth is best served by transparency. Let me know when is convenient. A public hearing. What do you make of that?
Well, first of all, Jim Comey, as far as transparency, almost whenever he's testified in public, so many questions he says he can't answer them because it's public, and he was asking to go private. the questions here could involve national security issues, sensitive issues. They also can impinge on other parts of the investigation where you don't want other witnesses to know what he's saying. So, no, listen, there's always two parts to these things in sensitive investigations. There's the private part, which is the way the FBI conducts its investigations, and then if you have to, you have the public hearing. But you do it in private because you want to have sustained questions and answers, and you don't want someone like Jim Comey to say, well, I can't answer that because we're in public. So, again, this to me is Jim Comey trying to distract attention on this. And also, cute. I know, for instance, there were times. Yeah, it's better be cute. Well, he told us things in private, which he then denied in public. Right. He told us that General Flynn did not lie. And then later on, he didn't recall saying that.
Yeah, isn't that convenient? All right, Congressman Pete King, great to see you as always. Happy Thanksgiving.
Julie, happy Thanksgiving. Bill. Right. And tell him a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Fox News Alert now. We got these protests erupting south of the border. This is near Tijuana. Thousands of Central American migrants have arrived in that town. And this was the scene on Sunday. A live report from Tijuana coming up in a moment here, Julie.
Plus, President Trump claiming victory in the midterms after stumping for Republicans for months before the election. Former Congressman Jason Chaffetz is on deck. He joins us next.
People are saying, sir,